Episode 6 picks up almost immediately on the heels of episode 5. Bran is being dragged on a sledge and chased by whites. He opens his eyes and he's in shock.
Mira, they found us.
Hodor's heroic sacrifice bought them some time, but it hasn't set them free. I mean, they're still in grave danger.
Mira is just hoping against hope that she's going to be able to save Bran's life, and of course, she is unable to do that without a little bit of help.
Come with me, now.
Benjen was so important in the early episodes. He's an important character who just disappears. It's one of the mysteries that's been out there for several seasons, and we've been looking forward to bringing him back.
The White Walker stabbed me in the gut with a sword of ice. His children found me. Stopped the Walker's magic from taking hold.
A shard of dragon glass plunged into your heart.
Cold Hands Benjen obviously had a lot to do with the Three-Eyed Raven over the past several years since his disappearance, and he's got a bit of a window into Bran's purpose.
You are the Three-Eyed Raven, no?
I didn't have time to learn. I can't control anything.
Bran had to absorb the history of the world, the entire history of the world in imagery.
Burn them all!
They talk about the Three-Eyed Raven. It's not just a title that you get. There's a part of him that's no longer Brandon Stark, but is the Three-Eyed Raven, and the Three-Eyed Raven is not, entirely human.
You must learn to control it before the Night King comes. You will be there waiting for him. And you will be ready.
Drink long and deep, my noble king, from this cup of sweet wine.
We were excited to do the play within the play, and it's a distorted funhouse mirror representation of things we've already seen.
Poison! Murder!
Part of Arya's amusement is just that she knows they're getting so many details wrong, but she always regretted that she didn't have a chance to watch Joffrey die. And now she gets to. It's obviously a comic version of it, but that gives her great pleasure.
Arya is kind of slowly getting seduced by these performances, and Lady Crane, the actress she's charged with killing, this is somebody who, like her, has taken as her life's work the job of becoming other people. When Arya is looking in the mirror and she's trying to decide who she is and what she is, and is she actually the kind of person who can do this killing, knowing full well that if she fails in this task, as Jaqen told her, one way or another, another face will be added to the wall. Implication is it's her face or it's your face.
She's killed plenty of people before, but there were always people who were either people she hated or people who were in her way. In this case, she's assassinating someone who she actually likes.
You have very expressive eyes, Mercy. Wonderful eyebrows. Do you like pretending to be other people?
The decision to shatter the glass before it reaches Lady Crane's lips means not just that she's going to be kicked out of the House of Black and White, but there's no coming back. Her chances of survival now have just grown very slim.
Wait here.
Daenerys talks about the dragons being her children, and that the dragons are the only children she'll have. Of her 3 children, she's always been closest to Drogon, and they clearly have some kind of connection that goes beyond words, and she just senses that he's out there in this scene. One of our favorite moments from season 1 was watching Khal Drogo deliver a speech to his gathered Khalasar. That speech clearly lingered in Daenerys' mind, and she's echoing almost the exact same language when she's talking to the Dothraki now. So she's basically telling them the promise that one of the great calls had made years before, and saying now's the time to live up to that promise and to fulfill it. It's something that's been set up for quite a long time, and now we're seeing it come to pass.
How many men did it take to cut you down?
Just one.
Oh,
He must have been some kind of monster.
He was a woman.
I think suffering a near-death experience probably changes anyone, and that certainly has changed Sandor Clegane. He's a more thoughtful person than he was when we last saw him. He's probably more aware of his vulnerabilities. He knows how close he came to dying, and he's really thinking about his past in a way that he never had before.
Never too late to stop robbing people, to stop killing people, start helping people. It's never too late to come back.
You can feel the very subtle effect that Ray and his community are having on the Hound, and he's starting to see that there's perhaps a different way of living your life.
What are you doing here?
Well, we're talking about life. You?
Protecting the people.
The unfortunate, ugly reality is that the kind of pacifism that Ray is preaching is often suicidal when you're in the middle of the kind of world that they're all in. Something sad about the fact that this person who tried desperately to walk away from what he was is being given no real choice but to go full throttle back in the direction of what he really is, which is a killer.
This isn't your fight. You shouldn't have to come to Winterfell with me. I shouldn't be asking you. I need you with me if we're gonna beat them, and we need to beat them if you're gonna survive.
John is not a wildling. John grew up in a castle raised by a noble father, but John has a much easier time with the kind of plain talk that the people north of the Wall resonate with.
He died for us. If we are not willing to do the same for him, we deserve to be the last of the free folk.
These wildlings that he's convincing are people whose lives he's saved. They're people who've seen the same things he's seen. They are reticent to follow anyone, especially a non-wildling, but they're all smart enough and practical enough to realize that the old rules that governed their existence for hundreds of years are no longer in effect.
No.
So he does a very good job convincing them, but he has a harder time with Lady Mormont.
I served under your uncle at Castle Black. I was his steward. In fact,
I think we've had enough small talk. Why are you here?
We were excited about the prospect of the character, because she's mentioned in passing in the previous season.
Do you know this wretched girl? Lyanna Mormont.
The Lord Commander's niece.
Lady of Bear Island. And a child of 10.
The more we thought about it, John is going to come up against so many old guys with beards in the north that, like, what if she was a tougher audience? It seemed like an inherently fun scene to watch. It also is terrifying because it's putting a lot of dramatic weight on the shoulders of somebody who needs to be very young. And we're very lucky to have found Bella because she is doing such a great job of just talking smack to these guys who are used to being the heroes who make proclamations.
What you have to understand, my lady, is that...
I understand that I'm responsible for Bear Island and all who live here. So why should I sacrifice one more Mormont life for someone else's war?
I'll never hurt you, little brother. Don't you know that?
Yara does love Theon, and one could argue that she's the only one who's ever really loved him. Yara's always been there for him. She's the only person who tried to rescue him when he was Ramsay's prisoner.
I know you've had some bad years.
Bad years?
But I'm tired of watching you cower like a beat dog. Drink the goddamn ale!
It's a very tough love, though. You know, Yara's not a therapist in our kind of sense of the word. She's not there to, you know, tell him to buck up and everything's going to be okay.
If you're so broken that there's no coming back, take a knife and cut your wrists. End it.
It's a pretty brutal kind of therapy, but that's who they are. I mean, they're essentially a Viking people. There's not a lot of room for sort of soft and gentle psychology. I think it's the kind of tough love that Theon needed at this point. And when he finally raises his eyes and looks into her eyes, we see a glimpse of the old Theon that had been lost for so long.
The Crown has decided that from this day forward, trial by combat will be forbidden throughout the Seven Kingdoms.
This moment is a grievous blow for Cersei because she's been counting on trial by combat really since the end of season 5. This was always her ace in the hole. The Mountain was never going to lose a trial by combat. There's no one out there who could beat him. And then Tommen takes it away from her. And knowing really what he's doing, he might be a weak king, but he's not an idiot. You know, he understands that this move is to mean that she's probably not going to fare that well in this trial. So it's a pretty devastating moment for Cersei, and you see that in her reaction, and partly because it's just bodes so ill for this coming trial, and partly because it's her own son who's really betrayed her.
7 blessings, Lord.
You know, he's in a tough position where he has to do what he thinks is right, and unfortunately for Cersei, what he thinks is right in this moment is doing something which is very much against Cersei's interests.
My name is Brienne of Tarth. Please inform Sir Jaime Lannister I've come to speak with him.
Jaime didn't expect to see Brienne necessarily ever again. He certainly didn't expect to see her marching into his military camp. And his relationship with her is obviously very complicated and fraught and has undercurrents that he's uncomfortable with feeling.
You gave it to me for a purpose. I have achieved that purpose.
Giving her the Valyrian steel sword was no small thing. There are probably like 10 of these things in the world.
It's yours. It will always be yours.
He's given it to her, not to carry out one task or for one stretch of time, but for the rest of her life. I think that's a symbolic, meaningful gesture on his part. And yet, here she's honor-bound to point out that they're not on the same side in this fight, and that if it turns to a real fight, they may end up having to actually fight one another.
It's these two who are not quite sure of how they feel about the other, and he lets her go. You know, he'd be well within his rights to send his men after her to capture her, and it wouldn't be that hard to capture her since she's being slowly rode away by Podrick, but he doesn't. She might technically be an enemy now that she's serving Sansa Stark, who is still obviously a suspect in Joffrey's murder, but she's not Jaime's enemy. So he's letting her go, and she knows that he's letting her go, and you know, who knows if they'll ever see each other again.
Arya is in danger. She's got an open wound in her stomach, and the one person who has protected her to this point, unfortunately, gets murdered.
The many-faced god was promised a name. He must always receive what is his. And now he's been promised another name.
The fact that the many-faced god gets the people who have been promised to him really makes you think that there's just almost an inevitability about what happens to people who run afoul of the Faceless Men, as Arya has done.
It will all be over soon.
Getting to the final part of the sequence, Arya's telling Jaqen by putting the face on the wall that this account is settled and we're good here and now I'm gonna walk away, and I think she knows what the answer's gonna be.
Finally, a girl is no one.
The implication is obviously that Jaqen on some level was rooting for the outcome that he got. He may be no one, but there's still enough of a person left in him to respect and admire who this girl is and what she's become. Arya finally tells us something that we've kind of known all along, that she's not no one, she's Arya Stark of Winterfell.
Despite appearances, I think you'll find the city's on the rise.
The city's on the rise?
The people are behind you. Well, not all the people, of course.
Daenerys, when she comes back to that situation, she has no idea what to expect. She doesn't know what's happened in Meereen. In a way, you feel for Tyrion because she left him with a terrible situation. The city was under siege from within and without, and he really did, for so long, such an excellent job of making things better there, and unfortunately what she comes back to find is exactly what she would have expected to find when she left. And the fact that she has a city at all still is due to him.
Good. Shall we begin?
Do we have a plan?
I think Dany's been becoming a Targaryen ever since the end of season 1.
She's not her father, and she's not insane, and she's not a sadist, but there's a Targaryen ruthlessness that comes with even the good Targaryens.
Your reign is over.
My reign has just begun.
If you're one of the lords of Westeros, or one of her potential opponents in the wars to come, and you get word of what happened here in Marine, you have to be pretty nervous because this is an unprecedented threat. You've got a woman who has somehow formed an alliance where she's got a Dothraki horde, a legion of Unsullied, she's got the mercenary army of the Second Sons, and she's got 3 dragons who are now pretty close to full grown. So if she can make it all the way across the Narrow Sea and get to Westeros, who's going to stand in her way?
I've defended the wall from worse than Ramsay Bolt.
You don't know him.
All right, tell me. What should we do? How do we get Rickon back?
I think Sansa's frustrated here because she knows Ramsay better than any of them do. There's no way Ramsay's gonna let him survive because Rickon is a threat to Ramsay's legitimacy as Warden of the North. He's a true-born Stark. There's no possible outcome where this ends well for Rickon.
From the beginning, we knew that one thing we'd never had on the show was a true medieval pitched battle, where 2 sides bring all the forces they can into play in some battlefield that's somehow negotiated or agreed upon, and they go at each other until one of them wins and the other one loses. This is a staple of human history, and we started to look through film examples of it. There really wasn't one that both made you feel what it was like to be there on the ground and gave you a sense of the geography of the battle.
Just to feel the kind of randomness of it where there's arrows falling from everywhere, people are getting killed, people are getting trampled by horses, and so much of it's just luck. Jon Snow is a very skilled combatant, but part of the reason he survives this battle is just he gets lucky.
We went back to the Roman fight against the Carthaginians in the Battle of Cannae, where the Romans got caught in an encirclement by Hannibal and just slaughtered to the man. And we used that as sort of our model.
The Battle of the Bastards becomes incredibly compact, and all these men, all these combatants crammed into this incredibly tight space on the battlefield. You read accounts of battles in the Civil War where the bodies were piled so thick it actually became an obstruction on the battlefield. Even for someone we love as much as Jon, just something so dehumanizing about it. And even his look, he's so covered in blood and soot. There's like a wildness to him, especially after what he's seen. There's just no part of Jon that's not going to pursue.
Open the gate!
The initial version of the battle all took place on the battlefield, but it was the battle for Winterfell. As we talked it through, it started to occur to us that the episode is really about bringing things home for Jon, have him fight for his home in his home.
He's a deeply good human being, but he pushed anyone beyond their limits and they snap.
There's nothing he wants more than to beat Ramsay to death with his own fists. And then he sees his sister, who suffered at the hands of this man, and he realizes that this person is not his to finish.
Sansa. Hello, Sansa.
The show doesn't always give people the things that are gonna make them happy, but this felt like a moment where it made narrative sense that they would win this fight and that Ramsay would come into their possession as a prisoner.
Is this where I'll be staying now?
I don't think Ramsay realizes it's over until he wakes up in the chair. I think he's crafty enough and he's always managed to get away with everything. I think he's still hopeful that there might be some way he can connive his way out of this one too, until the very, very end.
My hounds will never harm me.
You
haven't fed them in 7 days. You said it yourself.
His dogs were such a thing for him in this season and in seasons past, and such an extension of his own horrible urges, and the idea that they would be turned against him and that it would happen at Sansa's hands made a lot of sense to us.
Stop! Stop! Stop!
This isn't the little girl who wanted to dress up like a princess anymore. Her walk away at the end of the scene, and that's one of my favorite shots we've ever had. It's just the little ghost of a smile on her face. She's in Winterfell, but she's not the person she was when she first left.
I'm ready. I have to go. I'm late for the trial.
At this point in the story, you're trying to kind of play with the pieces that we've got on the board. The wildfire was something that we had on the board. We knew from Jaime's conversation with Brienne that there was wildfire under the city. We know from episode 2 that there was wildfire under the city. Everything that Olenna says about Cersei earlier in the season is true, that she's got no more friends left. She has no more power left. Olenna asks her point blank, "What, are you going to kill everyone yourself?" It's possible that she puts an idea in Cersei's head, or at least augments an idea that's already been in Cersei's head.
By the time that Lancel Lannister gets down there and sees that there is this massive catacomb and something suspicious is going on, I think you've got to start wondering, what the hell is this plot?
You see Marjorie's realizing slowly, horribly, like what is actually happening here.
Cersei understands the consequences of her absence, and she is absent anyway, which means she does not intend to suffer those consequences.
It's all been building up to this moment, and then, boom. She's really achieved a stunning, very surprising victory against everybody who's opposing her all at once. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Tommen's alone. This fragile, malleable, devastated child, basically, is sitting there without anybody to comfort him, and if she had been there, he wouldn't have gone out that window. She failed him, and she alone failed him here.
I think the idea of Cersei without her children is a pretty terrifying prospect, because it was the one thing that really humanized her, you know, her love for her kids. And as much of a monster as she could sometimes be, she was a mother who truly did love her children. And now those children are gone, and all she's got is power, and she's got a lot of it. I mean, she's the queen. She's sitting on the Iron Throne. I don't think that bodes well for anyone, really. And I think, you know, even for Jaime, who loves her, I think it's a terrifying moment. She's capable of doing anything, as she's proven in this episode, to get what she wants. And the real question now is, what does she want? Sansa, she does love her brother, you know, and they've had a conflicted past.
I'm not a Stark.
You are to me.
Over the course of this season, they've come to really rely upon each other, but she doesn't necessarily trust him completely. You know, she didn't tell him about the meeting with Littlefinger. She didn't tell him that she summoned the Knights of the Vale. There's definitely like a little hint of conflict there. We see that come out in episode 9, where she's, you know, at the War Council, where no one asks her opinion, despite the fact that she knows Ramsay better than anyone. So I think there's a little bit of anger about that, and a little bit of jealousy, and you know, that relationship will be crucial to watch.
You're the Lady of Winterfell. You deserve it. We're standing here because of you. The battle was lost until the Knights of the Vale rode in. They came because of you.
When we see the second King in the North scene with Jon, I think it was important to us that it evoked that first King in the North scene.
The King in the North!
The King in the North! It's very different circumstances, different environment. They're at Winterfell instead of, you know, military encampment.
We know no king, but the king in the north whose name is Stark. I don't care if he's a bastard. Ned Stark's blood runs through his veins. He's my king, from this day until his last day.
The king in the north! The king in the north!
In some ways, the evocation of the first one is meant to be a little bit worrisome because, you know, it was a very triumphant moment when Robb is named king in the north, but it didn't go so well for the previous king in the north. So I think we have to be a little worried for Jon. And at the same time, you know, it's a pretty big reversal and you know, for a character who was dead at the beginning of the season to be declared king at the end of it, he's done well. He's done well in 10 short episodes. Arya is someone whose path has been very dark, and yet I think we all see where she's coming from. I mean, she's seen the Stark family endure so many atrocities, and she wants vengeance. In some ways, it's the cleanest narrative of them all. Well, this is a scene we've been looking forward to for quite some time. Her return to Westeros and her revenge upon Walder Frey.
For House Frey!
My name is Arya Stark. I want you to know that. The last thing you're ever going to see is a Stark smiling down at you as you die.
It's a worrisome narrative for Arya because, you know, she started as this little girl who was always tough and plucky and whatnot, but, you know, she's become a murderer, you know, and a highly skilled murderer. And even if the murders are justifiable, it's still, we've witnessed the descent of this girl into someone who's capable of slitting a man's throat and kind of smiling as she watches him bleed out. So that's, you know, I don't think anyone's going to be crying over the fate of Walder Frey, but it's still, if you love Arya, you have to be a little bit worried about where she goes from here.
Tyrion had a very steep slope to climb to win Dany's trust. His family played an integral part in nearly exterminating her family. But at this point, especially given the hand he was dealt with Meereen after she left, has earned her trust. One of the few people in the world at this point who's willing to speak the truth to her face.
Mainly, he's proven himself to be very loyal. You know, she's gone for most of the season, but he didn't abandon her. He didn't go off looking for the next person to rule. I mean, he was clearly trying to serve her interests while she was gone. Dany's not going to do anything she doesn't want to do. She's not going to take anyone's advice if it seems against her interests. And so when he recommends that she cut ties with Dario, she does it because she thinks he's right. The truth is, Tyrion's logic makes a lot of sense to her. You know, he's not going to be a help for her when she gets to Westeros. She comes over there unencumbered, and as a queen without a king, that could be really useful in the future.
Who are you marrying this time?
I don't know.
You know, Tyrion has become a very capable advisor in a relatively short time. She clearly respects his intelligence, and she now respects his loyalty. I think, especially given that she knows where they're heading. They're going back to Westeros. Most of the people on her team have never been there, but Tyrion spent his whole life there, served as Hand of the King before, defended King's Landing during an attack.
I'd swear you're my sword, but I don't actually own a sword.
It's your counsel I need.
He knows these families, the ruling families, better than anyone. He certainly knows Cersei better than anyone. So as long as she can trust him, which she does, he's the perfect advisor to her in the war for Westeros. He's the perfect hand to the queen, and that's why she names him such.
That shot of Dany's fleet with all of her newly arrayed allies making its way out of the Slaver's Bay towards the Narrow Sea and home. Probably the biggest single thing that's happened on the show thus far. It's the thing we've been waiting for since the pilot episode of the first season. The person she is now is very, very different from the person she was then. It hasn't been a smooth road. Feels like she has earned it at this point.
It's the shot that we're going to leave everyone with.
But it was a real thrill to see her on the bow of that ship with Tyrion by her side heading west. It's a ruthlessness that comes with even the good Targaryens. I mean, these are the people who came over from across the Narrow Sea and conquered the known world. It'd be very interesting to see how that plays out going forward.